Our first lesson comes to us from the book of Micah. It is these words that are well known that Micah wrote that do seem to be so timeless down through the ages. Micah chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? No, he has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God? In the New Testament, we read from the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, these also timeless, treasured words of Jesus in the Beatitudes. Matthew 5, starting in verse 1. Jesus saw the crowds, and he went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You see, blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Amen. This is the word of the Lord. You have no doubt heard of the term a foxhole Christian. A person in a foxhole, of course, is an embattled person. Literally, someone in a foxhole on the battlefield whose life is in imminent danger there in the heat of battle. Shells landing around you, some of them hitting way too close, and so you hunker down and you make deals with God. God, if you get me out of this, I promise I will. And then fill in the blank with a whole lot of promises. I'll never doubt you again. I'll stop drinking. I'll give 25% of all that I have to you. I'll never cuss again. I'll never mistreat anyone again. All these kinds of promises are made out of fear in the heat of battle in a foxhole. And so it's a similar saying you've heard of that there are no atheists in foxholes. When you're in a foxhole and your life is in jeopardy, you believe in God and hope that you'll live to see another day, or you pray that God will have some kind of mercy upon you if you are about to die. You know, I certainly hope that no one in here ever finds himself or herself in a literal foxhole in battle, but I know many in our congregation have served in the military, and we've even had some who have seen live combat, and you know what it's like to be in that foxhole. I don't want to trivialize that very real, very intense experience, but I want to transfer that idea, that metaphor, onto the spiritual realm and talk about how hopefully for the rest of us there aren't battlefields where holes are in there and dug, but there is life. And in our spiritual life and our walk with God, there are holes that are dug, sometimes by ourselves, sometimes by others, and we find ourselves in them. It's not combat, but it feels like it sometimes spiritually. And sometimes the holes are deep and the circumstances are very scary, and we make promises to God while we're in them. And sometimes we keep those promises, and after we're pulled up from that foxhole, those promises are kept, and it might be the beginning of a beautiful relationship with God. or it might be confirmation of God's love. Even if that promise comes from a place of fear, it moves to a place of gratitude and deeper love. That definitely happens. One famous example is Martin Luther, who started the Protestant Revolution in 1517. You may know the story behind him. When he was a young man, he was headed into the profession of law at his father's insistence. In 1505, he had studied law for several months, and after he had gotten his university degree, he went on to study law, but he went home for a visit to go see his parents in their hometown. His father was especially proud of him, and he had worked so hard to get Martin Luther where he was in his education. His dad talked frequently about his plan for his son's life. On the way back to law school from Erfurt, from their hometown to Erfurt, Luther, he got caught in this incredibly violent thunderstorm. Maybe you've read about this. It's this very pivotal moment in his life. He talks about how rain was just lashing down, and that thunder was so loud it just reverberated everywhere, especially in his own chest. And there were lightning strikes exploding all around him. So he looked for some kind of shelter, and he saw on the side of the road this large granite rock. And so he grabbed onto that rock, and he cried out to God for help. He cried out for help, and he finished with this promise. He said, "If you help me, I will become a monk." It's quite a promise to make, isn't it? What a choice. A career in the highly esteemed profession of law, earning the respect of his community, especially his dad, a handsome income, no doubt also as an attorney, all the community prominence that would come with that, or on the other hand, a reclusive, lonely monk, hidden off from the rest of society, laboring for pennies a day, fasting and depriving yourself, taking a vow of silence, and even more seriously, a vow of celibacy for the rest of his life. One path as a lawyer or one path as a monk. Now, that is what I call a great setup for a lawyer joke. It's just this great setup. It's this great setup. But we have so many attorneys in our congregation that I am not going to say the 3 or 4 punchlines that I came up with to finish that line. There are at least 4 in here this morning in this very small crowd. I could count it already. So maybe I'll say it to you privately later. But that was Luther's promise. If you get me out of this storm alive, I will defy my father. Years of work, planning. I'll become a monk, never marry, never have a family, dedicate myself to the service of God. That was a spiritual foxhole prayer. And the next day, the storm relented, and God kept his end of the bargain, and Martin Luther kept his and changed the course of history. So I don't wonder if you've had a foxhole moment like that or a prayer, but really, not if, but when and how many. Because I think we all have them. You're in a hole of deep trouble, so much so that you make a bargain with God, and maybe it worked out for you, and you're in a better relationship with God now than ever before. Or maybe you've made a foxhole promise, and then once things got better, you let it slide. I don't know. I know that we all make them. Maybe spiritual foxhole moments. Maybe they are God's way of getting our attention. Getting our attention so that we would come around to a better faith and a better discipleship. In the most recent season of Landman, starring Billy Bob Thornton as Tommy, if you've watched this, you know that Tommy is a Texas oil man. He works in that oil-producing region around Midland, Texas, and he's really the problem solver for his company, and some of those problems are just enormous. His whole life, personally and professionally, is just one catastrophe after another. And there's one scene in one of the shows where he gets on an airplane to go to a contentious meeting, and there is just this incredible turbulence as they are taking off from Midland to fly the short flight to Fort Worth. Tremendous turbulence taking off, and the partner on the plane says, well, maybe the plane will just crash and we'll get out of all of this. And Tommy says, it'll never happen. God doesn't like me enough to let that happen to me today, to let me die. He's just like that, sarcastic and always seeing the downside. And then there's a scene in the second to last episode where, as everything in his professional and personal life is crashing down around him, family, his son has just been arrested, his career, he's just gotten fired for no good reason. Tommy is driving on the interstate headed back into the middle of all of these problems, and he looks up and he says, well, God, you got anything else for me? Just dump it right the heck down on top of me. Just freaking give it to me, he says, sort of. And right then a car swerves right in front of him and causes a massive wreck on the interstate right in front of him. He barely avoids it, and then an 18-wheeler plows right up next to him. All this huge wreck. He's not in the wreck, but he gets stuck in it nevertheless for hours. It's quite a prayer. It's still a prayer from a life's foxholes. And what's interesting in the last 20 minutes of that show after that is that his life does seem to come around a little bit better, a little bit at a time, personally and professionally. And then that whole episode, really the whole second season, ends with Tommy's silhouette framed against this incredibly beautiful golden sun setting light in that endless Texas horizon, and that late in the day glory just fills all the space around him. So of course, God doesn't promise any of us golden sunlight and a Hollywood happy ending. When it comes to our personal life, our professional life, sometimes it doesn't always come together in perfect harmony. But what God does promise, though, is to hear every prayer, even the ones that are angry, even the ones that are sarcastic, even those from the foxhole. God promises to answer you and to pull you up at some point, to pull you and I up and put us back on firm earth. God promises to find you in the storms of your life when you're barely hanging on, and all you have is enough strength to hold on until a new day dawns. So another example of God coming to someone in this type of foxhole situation, a spiritual foxhole, comes in this Old Testament book of Micah. And it comes in these words that are very familiar, but really in the whole book. Micah lived in this time when so many people were digging foxholes, literally and spiritually. It was a time of incredible warfare, the 8th century BC. And Micah's lifetime and his prophet time covered basically the second half, the 700s BC as it went down. All this warfare, conquering armies. Micah lived in the southern kingdom, and the northern kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrians in 722 BC, right in the middle of his life. And he could see the handwriting on the wall. The southern kingdom would fall too. And all these terrible problems were around him. Warfare, yes. Threats, economic destruction all over that part of the world. Exploitation, lots of injustice and people taking and stealing. And the leadership of Micah's day was so corrupt, especially the priests. No jokes of any other profession. It was the priests and the religious leaders who took advantage of the people and stole and enriched themselves, and people were digging foxholes everywhere. So Micah goes through this succession of ideas in these short verses. Ideas I think that all of us have when we are desperate for God's help. When we need God and we want to make these promises. We use these different areas of our life to try to prove ourselves worthy of God's help. All these areas where we promise to dedicate ourselves to God. And you can hear this succession of ideas that flow through in verses 6 through 7. In what way can I prove myself, make myself worthy for you, O God, in need of your help? I'll bow down and offer myself in these areas. First, in my religious life. Shall I come before God with burnt offerings and with calves a year old? And of course, Micah is referring to the very complicated but essential but complicated system of animal sacrifice for atonement that's set up in the Torah, in the law. The Torah prescribes sacrifices because God is so holy and so pure and so perfect. People are obligated, by the way we were created, obligated to obey God and not to be evil. And God's holiness in the Torah is the foundation of life. It's the foundation of moral life. In the Bible's way of thinking, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, there cannot be moral goodness apart from God. God is the one who established the moral categories of right and wrong in the first place. So there are natural laws given by God that apply to all people of every era of human history who have ever lived. And yet our sin and our guilt always separate us from God. So God provides a way for people to cover, to remove their guilt before God. And it's serious. It's very serious because it involves life and death and blood and having deadly guilt removed from your human life by a substitute, such as a 1-year-old calf without blemish. That was one of the atonement sacrifices that people made every year. A creature without blemish sacrificed to remove my guilt before God. I don't know about you, but how many times have we tried to prove ourselves worthy before God with our religious life or our church life? God, if you get me out of this, I promise I will go to church every Sunday for a year. God, if you help me, I'll read the whole Bible. I will teach Sunday school, even the youth. I will make any kind of sacrifice you want. If you please help me, I know I'm guilty. I know I've crossed a boundary that you told me not to cross. What can I do religiously to atone for my sin? And then second, Micah makes an area, he offers up this area that hits home for all of us, our stewardship, our use of money. Verse 7 says it in a way that might not come naturally to you and me, but it's, will the Lord be pleased with 1,000 rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Is there any amount of a monetary gift that I can give to please God? That will kind of force God's hand maybe to help me, compel God to help me. I mean, it's a staggering amount that Micah proposes here. And rams and oil aren't our currency, but you certainly get the picture. Micah is proposing an absurdly high sum, too much to imagine. Can I give millions or billions of dollars to godly causes to please God? Well, then God give me grace and love. Third, and this area really hits home, I think, for all of us. Micah talks about his family life and those who are the most important to him. Shall I give my firstborn for the transgression of my soul, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? And it doesn't get any more serious than this. What's more important to us than even money? What will cause God to take me seriously? And when will God turn my way? If I sacrifice the life from my own life, sacrifice what brings me pride and joy most of all? And again, it sounds strange to us maybe, but in that day, not at all. There was precedent for this. God asked Abraham to prove his devotion, you remember, by sacrificing Isaac, which didn't happen at the last second, but the test was there. During the Exodus from Egypt, the blood of a perfect lamb was painted on the doorposts so that death would pass over the firstborn who lived in that house. Sometimes we make these promises to God about our families, and they're not realistic. When we're tested, we're desperate, we make promises to God, Sometimes we're desperate because of our families, and we make promises to God about them or for them, which maybe we can keep and maybe we can't. But we make them anyway. These three areas of life, these essential areas, are posed as questions before God. They're rhetorical questions from Micah, and the implied answer, the obvious answer to all of them is no. No. You can't do anything religiously, philanthropically, or with your family that will bend God's grace and power in your direction. You can't do anything in any segment of life, personally or professionally, that will cause God to love you any more than He already does. There's nothing you can do, God says to you. There's nothing you can do to make me love you any less or any more, because my love for you is perfect. It is perfect. Do you hear that? You've heard it before, maybe so many times it doesn't ring fresh or true, but do you hear this? That the one true, holy, beautiful, perfect, and glorious God, the creator of the universe, loves you with a perfect, pure, and transparent love. There's nothing between you and God, nothing hiding God, nothing conditional in God's relationship with you, nothing blocking God from you. And this same God of love has revealed all that matters. He has revealed the whole way of life for all of His people. And it is one of the most famous verses in Scripture right here. Here's the good life. Here is this life I want you to live with me. Do justice, be merciful, and walk humbly. All of these three, they're so interrelated, and it's hard to be one without the other. They feed off of each other. God is saying, I am already for you. I'm already here to hear you. I'm already coming to your rescue. Don't do anything to try to win me over, because I'm already there by your side. So be this kind of person in response to what I've already done for you. Act in ways that are fair. Be just. Don't take advantage of somebody else's weakness. And I know how hard that is for people in business, because sometimes that's the law of the jungle. Don't take advantage of someone, stack the deck in your favor, even if you can legally, don't morally. In your communal life, society life, be just. Don't make the poor suffer any more than they already are. Don't use basic necessities of life like work or pay or shelter or food as leverage to try to extract something from those who already have so little. Pay someone what is a good wage, a generous wage. Be just and fair, and do right by the people who work around you and for you. And be merciful, which is very similar to being just. Have compassion on people when you are stronger and they are weaker. Have mercy on someone when he is broken or when she is sick or when someone's at a disadvantage. You should love. He says, love being merciful. Why? Because that's what God is toward you. God could dismiss you or disregard you or crush you or cruise by you or cause you pain, but He doesn't. Out of incredible love for you, it brings joy into God's own heart to show mercy to people. So do the same. Love mercy. You owe the same to others what God does out of love for you. Love being merciful. And walk humbly. Walk humbly. You know, people, if you watch them, you watch how people walk. Ever done that? I love to people watch. Sometimes I go down to the concourse at Crosstown, and I'll just sit in that main concourse with a cup of coffee, and I'll watch all these people walking by. Or the airport's a great place to watch people walk. You can see people strut like peacocks sometimes. You can watch people high-step their way into the end zone. You can watch people do the too small gesture as they blow by somebody on the court they just beat. You can slow trot the bases as a way to show up the pitcher. People can walk with their chest puffed up and their noses raised even higher, looking down on everybody around them. Or they can walk humbly because they walk with God. There's really no other way to actually walk with God, because you can't be walking with the creator of the universe and assume that you're really hot stuff at all. It just doesn't work. But you and I can walk with confidence, but not arrogance. We can walk with a gracious gait and not leave others behind. We can walk with God, who promises to walk with us through every valley of the shadow of death, every valley until we reach a new and greener pasture. Walking humbly usually means walking in a good direction, because the one guiding you is true and won't lead you astray. Walking humbly means relying on God's help when you need it, which is often, and then giving help when others are walking beside you. Walking humbly means walking quietly, because those who boast are loud and obnoxious. Walking humbly means walking with strength, because you are not weighed down with lots of extra baggage and burdens, because God offers to carry those for you. I don't know where you are today in a crowd, even if not a full church like this one. There's going to be people all over the life spectrum. There'll be some people who are walking confidently, but there'll be others who find themselves in a foxhole today. And if that's you, and if you want to get out and walk around, if you're hunkered down and it seems like maybe your life is one catastrophe after another, or even if you're not in a foxhole, but just trying to figure out how to navigate life through just everyday problems, listen to Micah's timeless advice. It's as good now as it was 26 centuries ago, and every single time in between. God cannot love you any less or any more, because His love for you is perfect. So be just and be merciful and walk humbly with your Lord. Amen.